the U.S. dollar system is a Ponzi scheme.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Quite literally.
100%.
And the reason Ponzi schemes are illegal is because this dude was just basically like, hey, I'll do what the government's doing. And then they're like, no, only we can do that.
I'll tell you where gold failed. Gold failed when you want a digital economy of billions of people. You were reliant on a central party, corporation, or government to achieve transaction finality. When gold was physical in the local, I went to the local butcher, gave him a gold coin. I went to the local tailor, gave him a gold coin, and it was peer-to-peer. Gold was fine. As soon as we scaled the world to billions and we were on the internet, I have to deposit my gold to the government and trust that Bitcoin is digital gold in this. It's not only a physical bearer instrument, but it's a network. It's a network that can achieve transaction finality without the central party. That's why it's better.
I know this is a little cliche to say, but you really need to just think about it. The U.S. dollar system is a Ponzi scheme.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Quite literally.
100%.
And the reason Ponzi schemes are illegal is because this dude was just basically like, hey, I'll do what the government's doing. And then they're like, no, only we can do that. We have the guns. So the way I have to describe it in the simplest of terms is, if the four of us all agree that, we're going to trade this tech deck over here, I'm going to give it to you for $1, you give it to him for $1, that all of the value of the labor that we're doing is inside our community. Mm-hmm. Along comes some dude with a gun who says, I got a tech deck, and he holds up this weird piece of garbage, and he says, I can now insert it into, with doing no labor, you will now accept my goods for your labor. So what the government basically does by printing money, they do no labor, but convince you to give you theirs.
Exactly.
They use that to fund wars and other, who knows what, hamsters on drugs fighting. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
They took hamsters, they gave them cocaine and made them fight.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, I do understand.
That sounds like a useful way to spend money.
They wanted to know what cocaine did to mammals. Whatever. I kind of think maybe you shouldn't print money and then give out these grants to just do these things. But once the government was able to have an infinite Ponzi scheme, the insanity started to envelop our society.
Yeah. There's I love the book Fiat Ruins Everything by Jimmy Song. I don't know how you guys feel about that book, but he kind of talks about this process where you can print essentially infinite amount of money and you can do whatever you want.
Go nuts.
You absolutely go nuts. The one that I thought would be most relevant to kind of what you talk about a lot is war. And so most people don't understand, before we could print as much money as we wanted, we had to finance the war. And when the war couldn't be financed, then the war was over because we didn't have any money for it. And so we had to sell war bonds. Do you guys support the war? Okay, give me your money. If you support it, you buy the bonds. And then once you're not ready to support it, you don't buy the bond. And then the war is over because we can't finance it. And now we're in these freaking forever wars because we could just print as much money as we want. How much did we give to Ukraine? I don't know. How much did
200 billion or something at this point?
But they keep failing the audits. So we don't actually know because they can't pass the audits.
Yep.
I think there's an argument to be made that you can't have fiat currency without war, and you can't have war without fiat currency.
It's fair, yeah.
I think the last 100 years has been the century of war because the last 100 years have been the century of nation states printing money.
Yeah. I mean, in the it's got a good ring to it. There will be war without fiat, but to this scale that we are seeing, modern warfare exists because the government doesn't need to ask the people to support its wars. It just makes the money. This is a problem of just general population scale, right? So we talk about, why are people mad at cops? Why do you end up with defund the police? Or why are people mad at healthcare CEOs? If you go back 300 years, you have a small town of a couple hundred people, and there's a guy who's known to be a dick who's dumping human waste in the river. He shows up to buy bread, and they go, you get out of here. You screwing everything up for everybody. He knows that he's got a community of people who are going to excise him. They're going to ostracize him. All the people are like, no, you can't be exiled, or we can't do these things. Now, a corporate CEO who's screwing people over and knows it can walk into any Starbucks, any store, and there's never going to be any social consequence. Yeah. So the U.S. government, the people know they're ripping them off. The people know these wars are bad. They continually express their distaste for these wars, but the people who are making the war machine happen have anonymity and will walk into any store, any building, and no one's going to say anything. There's no shame, there's no shunning, there's nothing. Because of that, they can keep printing money and keep ripping us off while we know it's happening.
Yeah. The misuse of the dollar is really what's going to be its own downfall, right? We saw it particularly when the U.S. weaponized the financial system against Russia when the Ukraine war started. And that was really a big red flag to all the other nations to evaluate their standing. If you're completely reliant on the SWIFT network and the US dollar, your country is now vulnerable to another country changing their opinion of you, and they can start cutting you off from the economics of the world. And I think that was a really eye-opening event where now that we do finally have an alternative that's decentralized, that's not held within any one country's borders, they're looking at this as an opportunity to say, look, if the United States is going to bully us around by having the global reserve currency right now, and they're going to put pressure on our economics of our country if we don't do what they're looking for, we have to look for an alternative. And you're seeing it with BRICS right now, right? Russia's starting to mine Bitcoin, and they're starting to set up mining facilities in other BRICS nations as well. And that's important to note because the reason that they have to do that is because not every country has the luxury the U.S. is going to have if we try to start a strategic Bitcoin reserve where we have to buy it in the dollars we print, right? We create the currency that we're accumulating Bitcoin in because we have the luxury of being the global reserve currency. If you look at all the other nations across the globe, they don't have that same luxury. A lot of them don't have the military power. A lot of them don't have the economic power. And a lot of them surrendered their own currencies to use the US dollar. So if you're one of those nations and you see a country, even like the United States, evaluating making a change, whether it's defensive or not, right? It's a defensive move. We shouldn't pretend that it isn't right now because the other big nations have said, we're going to look at bringing this on. But if you're a smaller country that doesn't have the luxury of printing the currency that you're going to buy and accumulate the Bitcoin in, you have to move first before the giants get in.
I do like your point, though, and in that, because it's the same thing in 2008, is that if there's no punishment, consequences for poor behavior, society can't function. 2008, the government didn't let the business cycle complete. If the banks messed up, then they should have gone under, right? And point being there is what I do think we're living through today with the red wave in the recent election is a reversion back to what's real. Is if you don't allow yourself to be governed by the immutable laws of Mother Nature, you screw humanity up. We are destined to be, that's what gold was. Gold was a good money for a long time because it's governed by the laws of Mother Nature. If you try and abstract your own universe, like your own Narnia, and govern human beings and society, abstracted too far away from Mother Nature, you screw things up. That's when people are like, I'm just going to have a Beyond Beef burger instead of a ribeye. Are you nuts? Right? That's when humans get so abstracted away. And it's like, but what I'm inspired by right now in America is a reversion back to what's real. Fuck those burgers. I'm going to eat a steak, right? At some point, people were educating me in university that the way government was spending money and going to war was a good thing, right? At some point, someone was saying, no, Bitcoin's bad. But now Trump wants to buy Bitcoin. Now people are eating ribeyes. I do think that we will see a reversion back to the means. There's a lot of cyclical behavior in this stuff. And we got too far abstracted, society did, and punished badly for not being governed by the universe, in my opinion.
Well, so let me ask you guys a question. Trump's talked about a strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, if Trump buys 500 billion in Bitcoin overnight to create a reserve, I mean, the price is going to jump, what, 20% instantly or what?
More.
Yeah. Right.
Because certain people just aren't going to sell. Like, I'm just not going to sell my Bitcoin. He's probably not. You know, so you have probably this really large illiquid supply where we're just not going to sell it at probably any price.
Well, I mean, Bitcoin's the only, they call it a scarcity. It's the only thing with an actual fixed supply. In financial markets, with more demand comes more supply. If everyone wants an iPhone, Apple can make as many iPhones. You can't make any more of this thing, so we've never seen price discovery in something. The only thing that's as scarce as Bitcoin is your life, is time. You're right.
Wait,
so
isn't there so I lost about 20 Bitcoin 12 years ago. I had a laptop.
Jeez.
RIP.
What are you thinking, Tim?
Well, I mean, it was worth $1 or something. Like it was like $27 on my laptop.
Yeah.
And so it got destroyed in a fire. Not by fire, but by the sprinklers. Just wiped the whole thing out. And I was like, whatever. And I threw it in the garbage.
Yeah.
And I was like, pfft. But there's an attrition to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's got a cap of 21 million.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's currently at 19.79 million.
Have been mined.
Have been mined, right? And so and it's becoming exponentially harder. I don't think we'll ever actually reach the 21 million technically, right?
2140, I believe.
2140.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. So subscribe and come hang out.